So I just want to talk about the previous year. If you suffered any sort of major disappointments because of your writing, not so much the actual act of writing it, but trying to get other people interested in your writing. That's the hardest part. And then when you start working in the business and you're doing it for real, I mean for real money, and what matters is when you are hired to write something, there's always the fear that you could be fired, right? And then it might impact your next job, or maybe you won't get a next job. So the first sale or the first assignment job is always the hardest, but I also say equally as hard is that next job, because there's no guarantee of it. At least if you're writing your specs and you haven't worked yet, okay, that is what it is. But if you suddenly work and get paid, now you're a professional. What happens if you don't work again, and you don't work again for a long time? There's no guarantee in the business. That's what can mess with your head. And I think as writers, we're always a little fearful of letting people see our work, because it's always criticized or it's rejected. I say always. I mean, generally, your work's going to be criticized. I mean, if you're working in Hollywood, you're going to get notes. Things are going to be changed. Maybe things you don't want to have changed in your script, but you're going to have to change them because that's the nature of the beast. You're not in complete control. You have other people to collaborate with, and they have bosses, and so forth. But there will be periods, and I've experienced it myself, because the longer you work in the screenwriting game, as it's called, you're going to suffer, soul-crushing failures, but at the same time, magical successes. So it's always, it's an up and down roller coaster at times, and you have to stay grounded and steady. You have to stay emotionally and creatively, steady, so that nothing throws you off and makes you spiral out into orbit. This is what you don't want. So then, you get paid and you're like, wow, this is real. This is kind of like when I was writing my specs, but now it's for real, and I have a deadline that I really have to meet, and it just has to be really good, because there's so many other writers out there who could take the job, and blah, 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 blah. All these voices working in your head. You clear out the noise and just focus on the work. There's no difference than when you're writing your spec as if you were writing on assignment, which is what I primarily do. I've had 20 assignments paid. I've sold one spec. So it's the same, except you have guidelines. You're writing a project for a specific producer with specific notes and a specific story. And it's no different than you writing your spec. So I say, when you're writing these specs, train yourself to set up self-imposed deadlines, because you're not going to be shocked when you're required to write a screenplay in 4 to 8 weeks, or maybe 10 weeks, let's say. You have to be able to hit it every day, because that's going to be your job. And you might have to work your day job while you're still writing, because maybe it's not enough money to quit. I've been in those situations before as well. And you live in two worlds, which really can mess with your head, because you're like, well, wait a second, I'm getting paid professionally to write a script, but I'm still at the day job. So, stay strong and know that, no job identifies you as a person. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not, I've done every odd job you can imagine. Waited tables, did catering, cleaned apartments. It's all in the book, actually, speaking. My book is available on Amazon. Just a shameless plug. A Screenwriter's Journey to Success, Tips, Tricks, and Tactics to Survive as a Working Screenwriter in Hollywood. 310 pages. Also, it's on Kindle. The disciplines that I've used and developed to keep my sanity intact over the years. And it just charts my story from film school and getting out into the world, and taking 6 years, actually, before I had my first professional job as a writer in Hollywood. 6 years after film school. I thought they would hand me my diploma, and I would go on to work at a studio with 3-picture deal. It wasn't the case. Not for lack of trying and writing, but eventually something broke. And like I said, everybody, and you're going to have a different journey than I had. Everybody's got their own journey, but the key, like I said, is not to get down on yourself. And, a lot of times you have to really know, because this is not a sprint. It's a marathon. I've been doing this for over 20 years. And there's been so many ups and downs that I'm used to it, But it still stings when something, that I've written doesn't get made for whatever, a myriad of reasons. But I've gotten used to it, because it's just like, okay, with so many movies that have been made, you go, yeah, I understand. It's tragic, but we'll get the next one, and you have to believe there will be a next one. Like I said, if you start working, the hardest thing is to get that first job, but also the hardest thing is to get a second job and a third, and then suddenly you've got, hopefully a career that you can sustain, and take care of yourself, pay your bills basically, and then some. I've been blessed to work myself into that situation where all I do is writing, but it's taken a long time to get to that point. To wake up in the morning and get paid to do what you love for a living. To me, that's success, And so, as I always say, it's not just one giant success it's going to happen. It's going to be a series of little successes along the way that end up opening a door, which then gets you in, and then, blah, 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 blah. And success might be, a manager reads your script and has a meeting. There's a success, You have to appreciate the little successes along the way and celebrate them, because sometimes they're few and far between. And then, the one success that finally gets you a contract to write something, even then it's great, but you have to do it again. So my point is, don't get down about the rejection or the so-called failures. Failures, I think, are just opportunities for learning. Failure is just a way, I think, of the universe asking you, how badly do you want this? And you say, well, more than anything. Okay, well, this one failure or rejection is not going to stop you, because if it does, then you probably don't want this bad enough. And that's not to say you should work, 15 years without selling anything and saying, well, there's still a chance. That's for everyone to have to decide upon, how long before either you change your way of doing things, or maybe if you're only writing feature screenplays, you try some television, you try a TV pilot, writing, a different genre maybe. But first and foremost, you should please yourself and be happy with what you're writing, and also, pick a genre and then kick ass at it. Be the best horror writer there is. And if you love horror, have that come through on the page in your project. Don't write a horror movie if you don't really like them, or you're like, yeah, well, I thought this movie sold, so I'll try to copy it. Good luck, So keep yourself grounded, because, you can get beaten up in this business very easily, and it starts working on your finances, but you're also your mental and emotional well-being. Your spirit can be just, diminished. And you have to constantly watch that while you're trying to get someone interested in your writing, whether it be a manager, an agent, a producer, executive. Doesn't matter who it is. First and foremost, you have to care about your writing, and hopefully that will show through, and make them care by writing something that is different and unique to you as a writer. And don't expect every spec that you write to sell, because they won't. It's just not, on the average 100 specs a year sell at the studio level, out of potentially 50,000 that bounce around. So if you want to look at those odds, they're terrible odds, but who cares, right? Because it happens. I sold a spec that was made that opened the door for assignment work. And so that spec served its purpose. Not that I didn't write other specs. I've written 36 screenplays, but 20 of them were assignment jobs. So the other 16, one was a spec. So that's 15 that ended up, as learning experiences or going out. Agent would go out to 40 companies on Wednesday, and then Friday the phone doesn't ring, and then it didn't sell. What do you do with that spec? You sit down and you write another one. These kind of things. So the specs are extremely important as tools for you to learn the craft of screenwriting and find your voice in the genre that you really like, but don't look to them as, the spec I'm writing now is going to help me, buy my house, or it's going to help me pay my rent next month. You can't put yourself under that kind of pressure. Hollywood works on its own time, and it's never your time or my time. And so everything takes far longer than you can ever imagine. Even a simple contract, I talk in my book, the contracts can take, say there's a holiday or an attorney goes out of town, it has to, drag on for weeks or a month, and you're waiting going, I got to pay my bills. Not a good place to be in, putting that crazy pressure. Don't believe them until the check clears, even when the contract's signed, because many times, like I said, I've had a handful of projects that I've been paid draft after draft, they're production ready, and they sit on a shelf because of a myriad of reasons. Marketplace changes internationally. The buyers don't want that type of film. The actors fall out. The financing falls out. And that's very depressing and disappointing. But what can you do about it? You soldier on, and you continue to screenwrite. If that's truly what you want to do, which I think you have to ask yourself, why are you writing screenplays? Is it fame, fortune, and glory? Because there's hardly that. We know about the people that we read about, and it does happen. But for most of the writers, like I say, the Writers Guild has 20,000 members and 5,100 something reported income. So, that's the others are not reporting income in a given year, and those are professional WGA writers. So you've got to love this. You got to love it more than anything else. I can suggest a book I'm currently reading called What Happens Next by Mark Norman. It's a history of American screenwriting. Really good book. I would suggest it to all screenwriters to learn about the history of our craft. And that book talks about the history from the start of filmmaking, and very interesting. Right now I'm in the 50s, talking about the blacklist, and just ending the 50s now, and it'll move into the 60s, and it talks about every era in Hollywood with screenwriters. So that's it. I wish you all good blessings this year. Keep writing, keep the faith, as I always say, because if you stop writing, that's a huge guarantee that you're never going to have any shot at success. And so why not give it your best, and always keep reinventing yourself. Listen, be a good listener, learn how to execute notes. That's extremely important, especially when you're hired to do a screenwriting assignment. And possibly you'll be able to do script doctor work, which I've done many times, where you come onto a project and you basically save the project doing rewrites, sometimes for credit, sometimes not credit. So there's rewrite work out there all over the place. And I would just say, keep your rejections and criticism that you receive in a little box, open, listen, learn, network constantly, be a good contact. Don't only look for people who can help you, help others, just because it's the right thing to do. And people will remember that. They actually do years later, saying, you helped me get that job, and I've never forgotten that. And then you start to build a friendship and a professional working relationship. Or I've been blessed that directors I've worked with on a project. We both move on to other things, and then we come back and worked on projects together. Initially the company brought the director in and had me work with the director, and then the project's finished, but we became good friends, and that's how you start to find mentors and also collaborators, which is the best part about it, is to work with really creative people. So pick up my book, Screenwriter's Journey to Success. It's on Amazon, and keep writing. And I'll see you again on Twitter at Scriptcat. You can go to my blog, My Blank Page, on WordPress, and there's over 250 articles there about screenwriting. I have a end of the year checklist, which is the current article, and also they've got 300 quotes about writing that I've found. And you can go to my website, 5o'clockblue.net, one word, and there'll be information about my screenplay consulting services. And I've got 4 movies airing starting on Friday, Sunday, next Wednesday, and next Friday. So I've got 4 movies, thrillers, my recent ones that are re-airing, which is always nice to start out the new year with stuff on television. So anyway, take care, and we'll talk soon. Bye.